Have you ever noticed that strange moment when you're endlessly scrolling through your social media feed and suddenly realize you haven't actually been seeing anything? That weird feeling of being completely there, but also completely gone at the same time. Your mind is working fine, processing everything, deciding whether to like a photo or keep scrolling. But underneath all that mental activity, there's this quiet emptiness you can't quite put your finger on. It's always there, like a shadow that follows every single thought you have. You're not alone in this. What you're experiencing is one of the most fascinating and unsettling things happening in our time. The rise of minds that are hyper-aware of everything, but somehow feel less and less. Today we're going to explore something most people don't talk about. The strange inner world of a humanity that has developed the ability to be conscious of almost everything, yet has lost the ability to actually be moved by anything. To understand how we got here, we need to go back in time and look at a quiet shift that has been happening in human consciousness for at least 300 years. For most of human history, people had a raw and direct relationship with the world around them. When our ancestors watched the sunset, they didn't just notice it, it hit them. The beauty of nature wasn't something they observed from a distance, it lived inside them completely. Their minds weren't cut off from their bodies, and their bodies weren't cut off from the world. Consciousness back then was a fully connected experience, where thinking and feeling were just two parts of the same thing. But something remarkable started happening as the modern era kicked in. Slowly, we developed the ability to watch our own thoughts, to become spectators of our own experiences. Philosophers call this metacognition. At first, everyone celebrated it as the greatest leap forward in human evolution. We could now think about thinking. We could be aware of our own awareness. It felt like we had grown an internal camera that could film everything else happening inside us. It seemed like the ultimate victory of the human mind. Through the 1700s and 1800s, this new capacity for self-observation completely changed how we understood ourselves. The Romantics discovered the inner world as an endless territory to explore. Scientists started studying the mind as something you could actually examine. Artists stopped just painting the outside world and started painting the finest textures of inner experience. It was as if humanity had stumbled onto a whole new continent, the land of consciousness watching itself. But here's the deep irony in all of this. The more we became capable of watching our feelings, the less we actually felt them. The more we learn to analyze our emotions, the less those emotions could actually reach us. Observing something creates distance from it. And that distance, which at first felt like freedom, slowly turned into something much more troubling. A quiet but persistent disconnection from our own emotional lives. Think about your own experience for a second. How many times have you caught yourself in the middle of a happy moment analyzing whether you're actually happy? How many times have you watched your own sadness like a scientist studying something interesting but far away? How many times have you found yourself thinking about love when you should have just been loving? This ability to step back and observe, which was supposed to make us more free and more aware, often turns us into audience members watching our own lives play out on a screen. Digital technology has pushed this whole process to a level we're only beginning to wrap our heads around. Our screens aren't just windows to the world. They're mirrors that constantly reflect our own mental activity back at us. Every click, every like, every share is a way of watching ourselves, seeing our own preferences and reactions in real time. The algorithms feed us refined versions of who we already are, creating an endless loop of self-observation with technology right in the middle of it. We've turned into curators of our own experiences, editors of our own stories, professional monitors of our own inner lives. Social media has taken this even further in ways nothing before it ever could. We don't just live experiences anymore. We document them, polish them, share them, and then watch other people consume them. A beautiful view is no longer something you just stand in front of and take in. It's something you photograph, filter, write a caption for, and post. And the whole time you're doing that, part of your brain is running a parallel analysis. Am I genuinely blown away by this view? Is this moment actually meaningful to me? Or am I just chasing the dopamine hit of getting likes? How is this going to come across to everyone who sees it? This constant self-monitoring creates a mental state you could call reflexive hypervigilance. You're always switched on, always watching yourself, always analyzing. But at the same time, you're less and less actually present for anything that's happening. It's like having a control tower in your brain that monitors every single process below it, but in doing so has completely lost touch with the territory it's supposed to be overseeing. The result is a specific kind of modern pain, the emptiness of the hyperconscious mind. These are people who have access to more information, entertainment, and opportunity than any generation in human history. And yet, they report record levels of anxiety, depression, and a feeling that nothing really means anything. It's not that rich experiences aren't available to them. It's that the relationship they've developed with their own experience makes those experiences almost impossible to actually access. I want to stop for a moment and ask you something directly. Does any of this connect with what you personally feel? Do you also experience that strange combination of being fully conscious but profoundly cut off from your own feelings at the same time? I know a lot of us keep this to ourselves. Maybe because we feel like we don't have the right to feel empty when we have so much, or like we're being dramatic. But what you're feeling is real and far more common than you think. Drop something in the comments. Say where you feel this emptiness the most. Your voice helps build something here, a space where we can talk honestly about what so many of us are quietly going through, instead of just pushing it down. When we name something together, we take the first step toward changing it. This disconnection isn't just something happening inside individuals either. It's reshaping the structure of our entire society. Look at how we consume culture today. We don't just watch a movie anymore. We watch it while checking our phones, reading reviews in real time, forming opinions that we're already preparing to post and discuss. The direct experience of art is constantly being buried under layers of analysis and commentary. We don't just listen to music. We build playlists that represent who we are, analyze lyrics for deeper meaning, and use songs as soundtracks for the carefully constructed versions of our lives we present to the world. Even our language has changed to match this new reality. Notice how we talk about emotions now. We say things like, I felt like I was feeling sadness, or I had the experience of being anxious. That phrasing sounds more precise and thoughtful, but what it actually reveals is a gap, a distance between the self that watches and the self that's supposedly doing the feeling. We've become live translators of our own inner lives, turning raw experience into processed language almost as fast as it happens. The entire wellness and self-help industry has exploded specifically to address this new kind of suffering. We offer mindfulness techniques to people who are already overly self-aware but disconnected. We teach meditation as a way to observe your thoughts without judgment, without stopping to ask whether the act of constantly observing is part of the very problem we're trying to fix. We sell apps that help people track and monitor their moods, as though what someone feeling empty needs is more data about themselves. One of the most fascinating effects of all this is what it does to memory and time. When you're constantly observing and analyzing your experiences as they happen, they lose their ability to settle into genuine emotional memory. Instead of memories that are thick with feeling and texture, you end up with something more like well-organized folders, neatly filed, properly labeled, but completely drained of the life they once had. It's like turning your own biography into a tidy museum exhibit, where everything is perfectly preserved, but nothing is actually alive. This shift is also fundamentally changing how we connect with other people. Take romantic love. It has become one of the most observed and analyzed experiences in modern life. We don't just love someone, we watch ourselves loving them, question whether what we feel is real, compare our relationship to every idealized version of love we've ever seen in movies and on Instagram, and constantly evaluate whether we're doing it correctly. The result is that many people describe feeling like actors performing the role of someone in love rather than people who are actually in love. Friendship has gone through the same thing. Our social interactions are filtered through endless layers of self-observation and analysis. We watch our own communication patterns, think about group dynamics, assess whether we're being genuine or putting on a show. Even spontaneity has become something we try to manufacture on purpose, which creates the deeply absurd situation of consciously engineered spontaneity. At work, this reflexive self-awareness shows up as an obsession with productivity and self-optimization. We don't just do our jobs. We track our own output, chart our energy levels, measure how efficient we are, and continuously adjust our systems and habits. We've turned into the managers of ourselves, perpetually supervising the employee we happen to also be. But here's what matters most. This isn't just a personal problem that can be fixed with better habits or stronger willpower. It's a fundamental change in the structure of human consciousness itself, and it comes directly from the conditions of the world we've built. The hyperconscious but emotionally numb mind isn't a personal failure. It's an adaptation to a world that demands you constantly monitor, adjust, and manage yourself across dozens of different roles and contexts at once. We're expected to simultaneously be productive workers, smart consumers, engaged citizens, available friends, attentive partners, responsible parents, and fully realized individuals. To pull all of that off, we've developed an incredible capacity for self-observation and analysis that lets us move efficiently between all those roles. But the cost of that efficiency is a quiet alienation from our own direct experience of being alive. Technology speeds this process up and amplifies it, but it didn't create it. The groundwork for the hyperconscious mind was laid long before smartphones existed. It started with industrial capitalism, which trained workers to become observers of their own productivity. It deepened with urbanization, which created social environments that demanded constant self-monitoring and adaptation. And it was cemented by formal education, which taught generations to analyze and categorize their inner lives instead of simply living them. So what do we actually do with all of this? How do we live in a world that demands hyperconsciousness while we're secretly starving for a more direct and vivid connection with our own experience? The answer isn't to try to go back to some pre-reflective state of pure innocence that probably never existed in any clean form. And it isn't to just accept this condition as something we're stuck with. What we can do instead is start developing something like an ecological awareness of our own inner life. Just as we've learned to understand our impact on the environment and make more intentional choices about how we interact with the natural world, we can learn to notice our patterns of self-observation and make wiser choices about when to observe and when to just be present. This doesn't mean getting rid of our ability to reflect on ourselves. That capacity is genuinely useful for navigating the complexity of modern life. It means developing a healthier and more balanced relationship with it, learning to tell the difference between the moments when self-awareness is actually serving us and the moments when it's just become a habit that walls us off from our own aliveness. A real clue comes from noticing the kinds of experiences that still manage to pull us into a state of direct presence. For some people, that happens during intense physical activity, where the body's immediate demands drown out all the mental noise. For others, it happens in nature, where the sheer scale and beauty of the natural world temporarily silences the inner commentator. For many, it happens in creative work, where the process of making something absorbs attention so completely that there's no room left to watch yourself doing it. What all of these experiences share is that they engage your attention in a way that makes self-observation temporarily pointless or impossible. They remind you that you're still capable of more integrated and fully alive states of consciousness. And more importantly, they show you that those states aren't some kind of regression to a more primitive way of being. They're actually a more mature integration of your capacity to observe and your capacity to directly experience. Part of growing into genuine wisdom around consciousness might mean learning to move more fluidly and deliberately between different modes of being. There are times when reflection and self-analysis genuinely matter. When you're trying to understand a destructive pattern, when you're making a big decision, when you're learning something new. And there are times when all of that is just noise that keeps you from being fully present to what's actually happening in your life. The goal isn't to destroy the internal observer. It's to educate where its attention goes. To learn when your metacognition is in service of life and when it's become an escape from it. This also means rethinking how we relate to the technologies that feed our tendency toward constant self-observation. We don't need to throw our phones in the ocean, but we can build a more intentional relationship with them. We can carve out spaces and times in our lives that are genuinely protected from the non-stop demand to document, analyze, and share everything. We can practice the increasingly rare art of having experiences that aren't immediately converted into content for ourselves or for anyone else. And maybe most fundamentally, we can start questioning some of the cultural assumptions that are feeding this particular kind of emptiness. The idea that more self-awareness is always better. The belief that we should be able to optimize our experience at all times. The expectation that every moment should be meaningful and transformative. The pressure to always be working on ourselves. There is something genuinely radical about letting an experience exist without immediately observing, analyzing, or trying to improve it. There is a quiet act of resistance in refusing the cultural mandate for constant self-optimization. And there is real wisdom in recognizing that some parts of human experience are better left unexamined. This isn't romanticizing unconsciousness or defending ignorance. It's recognizing that genuine wisdom means knowing not just how to think, but when to stop thinking. Not just how to observe, but when to stop observing. Not just how to analyze, but when to leave something alone and let it remain what it is. Now, separately but relatedly, it's worth thinking about the external forces shaping all of this. A huge part of why most people are even watching this video right now is because an algorithm decided to show it to them. Algorithms have become extraordinarily powerful. They increasingly shape what we see, what we think about, and what we feel. As Yuval Noah Harari has pointed out, algorithms have become the primary publishers and distributors of stories in our world. For the first time in human history, something that is not a human being gets to decide which stories spread and which ones disappear. And unlike human publishers, editors, or broadcasters who can be held accountable for what they put out into the world, algorithms have largely operated without real accountability. If a social media algorithm recommends hateful conspiracy content to millions of people, the responsibility for that doesn't lie with the person who originally produced that content alone. It lies with the people who designed the algorithm and set it loose. Algorithms don't have freedom of speech. They're systems built by people making choices, and those choices have consequences that we're only now starting to seriously grapple with. At the same time, we're watching something larger unravel. Harari has described how the past few decades, despite their very real violence and injustice, represented the most peaceful and cooperative period in human history, an era of unprecedented global collaboration and prosperity. That order is now fracturing. And when you tear down an existing order without having a viable alternative ready to replace it, what you get is not a better system. What you get is chaos. What you get is disorder. And the particular danger of disorder right now is that we have technologies of destruction that are far more powerful than anything previous eras of instability ever had access to. These two threads connect in ways that matter. The internal emptiness of the hyperconscious mind and the external fragmentation of the world's order are both symptoms of the same deeper condition. A humanity that has developed extraordinary capabilities, but hasn't yet developed the wisdom to use them well. The same technological forces that have accelerated the disconnection of the individual self are also accelerating the unraveling of collective structures that hold societies together. The invitation here, if there is one, is to take both of these seriously at the same time. To do the inner work of developing a wiser relationship with your own consciousness, while also staying clear-eyed about the larger forces shaping the world you're navigating. Because the emptiness of the hyperconscious mind is not just a private struggle. It is a symptom of a broader transformation in what it means to be human right now. And we are all finding our way through it at the same time. If we can start naming it honestly, together, that may be exactly where something genuinely new begins.